Hi, it's Robbie from Southern California, and today we're going to try to stay on topic and only talk about squash bugs. And it won't matter if it's the squash bugs that are the vine borers or the regular squash bugs, because what I'm going to talk about is keeping them out. It will be basically the same. They're both different insects, but they both do great damage to your squash. Now, I'm going to talk about a little bit what I would do if we had them. We don't have them here in Southern California. That is not to say that they won't show up one day. And if they did show up, I would not give up on growing squash. Zucchini, especially, is my favorite because I put that in everything that I make. I can add that to my ground beef and take a pound of ground beef and end it with two. And you can't taste it. It's it's my favorite vegetable to grow. You all know that. Now let's talk about these dog kennels I'm setting up. This could be the answer to your problem if you're dealing with squash bugs of any type. But it also could be your problem if you don't do it right. And there's going to be a right way to do it and a wrong way. Usually I tell you there is no right or wrong way, whatever works, but there will be a wrong way. Here I've been collecting things from around the yard, leaves and different matter. If I was dealing with squash bugs and I was going to designate a dog kennel or whatever you set up that's enclosed, completely enclosed, then this would not work. And that's why I decided instead of waiting till spring, we're going to talk about this now. You would have to take a building and cover it in 1/4 inch wire. That would be the number one. The second, because some of them could be small enough to get through the 1/4 inch wire, I would cover the entire building in tulle. Now, tulle, I put the links underneath, go in the description, and then sometimes you'll see a more, tap on more again until you see all the listings that I listed. I think I've got hummingbird feeders there and a few other things that I use. You can see the tulle is there, and it's $10 for 40 yards, 54 inches wide. I can probably do this whole building for about 10 bucks. I know this one I'll have left over. Even if I had to do 20, it will last you 1 to 2 years outside on your building. Now, what you're doing is you're preventing them from coming in. They don't chew. All the research I have done say they don't chew any type of fabric or wire, thank goodness. Otherwise, we'd have to do something else. Now, the big thing with them is why I say this won't work, because I'm composting in here and I'm doing all that, is you don't want to bring them in. Both of them during the winter, let's use the word hibernate, sleep for the winter, in the ground or in leaves. One of them is a grub in the soil. Another one, they kind of go underneath leaves, and that's where they just kind of hibernate and disappear for the winter. And then come spring at the right time when it's warm enough and your squash are just starting to grow, that's when they come out. Now, if I brought in some leaves that I raked up around the yard and put it in these containers, let's say I'm going to compost in here, I have now just brought them in. And what am I going to do? I'm going to bring them in. They're going to come out of the soil at the right time, or the leaves. They're going to hit my plants, and there's no insects, or I should say, yes, no insects or birds to eat them, because some of them will be eaten by wildlife, but not enough, because I know how badly you're dealing with it. So you're going to have to do an enclosed growing building, completely different than anything else. What you're going to have to do is start to, first of all, get the entire thing covered. So nothing can get in and nothing could get out. Remember that. So you want it completely covered. Then you're going to set up things to grow in there. Now, you're going to have to compost only things that come out of the building. So you can start growing any green matter you want to grow in there and use the leaves to compost. You're going to have to buy bagged soil that is sealed. Don't buy any open bags just in case something got in there. It will have to be a sealed bag, and make sure you get something that's a name brand so you don't end up with any soil that's not good. Then you can bring in your kitchen scraps. Food that you've eaten that's left over, no good, you can compost in the building. You're going to have to set up 1 or 2, like I did here, 2 big ones. These are like 30-gallon totes. Compost your own compost in your building. This is so important. And you're not going to take anything off the ground in that building. I would, if it was me, designate one building, and you could go with a small one. This 8-foot dog kennel will grow a ton of zucchini in here. You're going to designate that strictly for your squash. Now, you can grow other things in there. There's nothing wrong with doing that. You can grow as many plants as you want in there, whatever you can fit in there, but you're going to only compost what you're growing in there, except kitchen matter, because you're not going to have squash bugs in your kitchen. Then once you start doing that, you're going to have a lot, because as your plants die back, even your squash, you're going to take those leaves and you're going to put them in your totes where you're composting, and that is going to be 100% safe. But anything else you bring in from outside, you will bring it in. You may only bring in one, which could multiply to a few, and you could have a few issues, unlike if you were out in the open where you're going to have tons of them coming in. But the point is, why not start it right? Compost only that is growing in the building that you have designated for squash. It's not as hard as it sounds. It's going to be very easy. It really is. And then with that, your kitchen scraps, bring it in there. Now, you could get, if you knew somebody, horse manure or whatever, if you were near farmland, just be very careful that it hasn't been sitting for any length of time, that something has laid eggs in it. I personally would not. I would stick with buying a good potting mix, and I would start to compost all my kitchen scraps in there. That's going to be more than enough for you to grow squash. This is why I was telling some of you, don't bring anything in from the outside where you're going to try to keep squash bugs out, because it doesn't matter which one you're dealing with. They both go into the ground one way or another, and they both come out of the ground, and then they lay eggs, and the babies get, the insects get inside your plant and they eat it from the inside out, and you don't want to start with them. If accidentally something flew in there and you're on your way and the plants are growing, a few of them probably won't hurt at first. If that does happen at the end of the season, you may have to take everything out and start over. But I think you could do it where nothing's going to get in there. You see them flying around. They may kind of hang around a little bit because they'll know that there's squash in there, but they won't be able to get in. They can't get through tulle. I don't even know if they can get through 1/4-inch wire that's covered, but I wouldn't take a chance. Just in case they found the gap, I would just wrap the whole thing in tulle. Do it in black. You'll see when I get to this, I'm going to paint the wire black. I'm going to put black tulle on it. It's going to look beautiful. You're going to be able to see in all the plants. But this is why I decided, let's get this talked about now. Now, if you have questions, I want you to ask me the questions now. So I'll come back and we'll talk about it over and over, because that is very important. Now you can, and we can talk about that also, designate one tote, let's say each tote, for squash, which means you'll have to completely wrap it in tulle and tent it up. Can that be done? Sure. If you don't want to do a building, you could get a 20-gallon, 30-gallon tote. Most of mine are 18-gallon, and you can enclose the whole thing in tulle. And what you can do with that is, right now, you can set up a tote just like I set it up, and then start putting in your kitchen scraps and leaves above the ground, not from squash, but let's say kale and collard in there. You can use some scrap paper, whatever you're going to compost, and you're going to put it in there. If you can look under pots and get some earthworms, you could do that too, and the microbes will come in. And then come spring, you will grow in there, but you're going to have to keep a lid on it or enclose it in tulle. You don't want to take any chances, even though they're not out right now. I just wouldn't take a chance of something getting in there, in case they did get in there and then hatch out later when you had a plant growing. So I would keep it covered in tulle, and then come spring, plant your squash, and we can build a tent. We can use irrigation tubing. You can use a lot of different things, and you can designate one tote per plant. I wouldn't put more than one zucchini plant in an 18-gallon tote. I think that will be enough, and the plant will grow beautiful that way. But you're going to have to keep it enclosed, and you will, this is important, have to hand pollinate, which is the easiest thing to do. So you will need to get more than one plant. You're really good to have 2 or 3 or 4 plants growing. So this way, when you have a female flower, and you'll see the little tiny ball underneath the flower itself, that's the baby squash. You'll need to get a male flower and pollinate it. And I've got tons of videos on that. It is so easy. This past year, we had fewer bees and creatures that normally pollinate my squash. out there doing their job. So I hand pollinated. Any squash that I did not hand pollinate when it came to zucchini, most of them didn't make it. But the ones I pollinated on my own, they all made it. So it's really easy. You'll hand pollinate, you'll have a designated container completely covered in tulle from day one. You will only compost kitchen scraps coming out of your kitchen, even if it's grocery store food. Don't worry if it's organic or not. You're going to use that for your compost. And then leaves, you can collect leaves off of certain plants, but I'd rather not you get it from the ground, but get it from the plant itself up in the air, because none of them that I have found will go at this time of the year in the winter and early spring. They're not in the leaves itself right now because nobody's growing zucchini. So they're not out and about. And that's the only thing you're going to compost. And then the other thing is you're going to buy your own soil. If you do that, and you will be making your own soil. So you're going to buy a couple bags now, and then next year you're going to have already your soil made. You're going to maybe buy one. You won't need to buy that much. And that's all there is to it. It sounds complicated, but it really isn't. So designate an area for your zucchini and get them covered and protect it like it's your biggest pride and joy, and you don't want anything to get to it, whether it's a bug, a cat, a bird, and you're going to completely cover it with tulle. And I'm going to tell you, after the first time you do it thinking it's so hard and you find out it's so easy, you're going to be doing this every year. Your neighbors are going to be doing it. Your family members are going to be doing it. Everybody is going to cover their zucchini, and they're going to grow a ton of it, and it's going to be fantastic. So ask your questions. I'll go through your questions. We'll come back and we'll talk more about this because it's important. And I'm telling you, that's what I would do. So with that, have a wonderful day. And don't forget to eat what you grow. And you can grow it. Bye-bye.